This morning on Capitol Hill, Susan Manares, who was confirmed by the Senate as CDC director in late July. So it's been like a month and a half since that point. She was fired within weeks by RFK Jr. A month later, less than a month later.
Who hired her?
Who hired her, right. And she was fired, and then a bunch of other senior CDC officials resigned, including the chief medical officer and other people who were leading vaccine policy. And so in front of the Senate today, you have Moranis and also, I believe, the health policy head who resigned, testifying about RFK ordering, at least the CDC director here, ordering her to fire these vaccine officials. And then she said and if she refused, basically she was going to be forced to resign. So here's her explaining how that went down.
On August 19th, I received a directive from the Secretary's office that I now required prior approval from my political staff for CDC policy and personnel decisions. On August 21st, I was told to return to Washington from Atlanta immediately, which would have meant missing Officer Rose's memorial, something I was not willing to do. When I did return, I was concerned about my ability to continue to lead the CDC while preserving evidence-based decision-making. Commitments I had made to this committee during my confirmation hearing. On the morning of August 25th, Secretary Kennedy demanded two things of me that were inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. He directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation, regardless of the scientific evidence. He also
just pause it for a second, just so I can explain. That's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. So she said the acronym there, the ACIP. That's what she's referring to there.
He also directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. He said if I was unwilling to do both, I should resign.
Jesus.
I responded that I could not pre-approve recommendations without reviewing the evidence, and I had no basis to fire scientific experts. He told me he had already spoken with the White House several times about having me removed. For 3 decades, I have worked at the intersection of public health, science, and technology innovation, always challenging the status quo and welcoming the changes that come from research and discovery. Even under pressure, I could not replace evidence with ideology or compromise my integrity.
Now, Bill Cassidy is the chair of this panel. He voted to confirm RFK Jr.
It was the deciding vote.
As a physician himself. There was hope. Will there be any resistance to this fascist, far-right, conspiracy-laden, anti-intellectual, anti-science administration? Will there be any bumps in the road for his picks, his insane picks? There was one, Matt Gaetz, and it's because other Republicans hate him personally. Everybody else, glide path to confirmation.
I think that's one reason you're seeing such the widespread shock and upset with the Democrats. I mean, obviously this isn't just about the Democrats, it's about widespread shock at the moment, right? Like,
yeah.
I remember listening to science podcast Skeptic's Guide to the Universe in the run up to that, and they weren't very optimistic that Cassidy was going to step in, but at least one of them thought there might be a chance. And no. Unfortunately, this is not the Republican Party, especially that we have right now. Right.
And he is, now feeling a little bit of heat because I believe Cassidy's up in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to confirm that right now, if you don't mind actually just checking for me, Brian. because look, Louisiana, very red state, but these red states and states with more rural areas are going to be hit the hardest by the big ugly ass bill.
2028.
2028. Okay. And that's going to be, it might be a worse situation for him at that point.
Yeah.
So,
and I just want to point out, based on what I said, every Democrat did vote against RFK. There was nobody who broke with him there. So they especially needed Cassidy.
they did.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's 2026.
2026. Okay, never mind. There you go. So he may be a little bit nervous here because the Trump administration is not popular. And this kind of change, too, unfortunately, RFK polls better than basically every other cabinet official, in part just because I think he's talking about health things, and you'll hear like
people think he's liberal too.
Right. You'll hear like people's kind of like pet issues being addressed, like the dyes he took out. You know, I had a family member being like, I don't like him, but I like that. And so he's talking about people's anxiety about healthcare, and that's enough
food.
because we have no infrastructure, and we to critique the Democrats again really on this is like, if we had a party that was united behind Medicare for all, we are going to make it so you don't have to have this anxiety about healthcare that can be exploited by charlatans like this guy who says there's a supplement you can buy. There's some things you can avoid. There's all of this stuff that can alleviate your concerns about your healthcare, which are primarily borne by the insane cost of healthcare. It undercuts his ability to make this case to people.
I've played this before, but this is the Senate candidate that we're all a fan of in Michigan, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, talking about making this exact point, and I think it just can't be repeated enough.
Well, I think we're so often focused on what we're against rather than saying what we're for. Mm-hmm. And too often, those of us who have stood for science, we've had a really hard go of it because we've watched as corporations who we entrust to make things like vaccines and pharmaceuticals that people need and deserve, they have too often written the rules that regulate them. And that's meant that our healthcare is out of reach. I got to be honest with you, during COVID, we're asking people to take a vaccine for a disease that didn't exist a year ago, but then they can't afford insulin, which is medication for a disease they know they have. I think we have to recognize that the trust in public health has to also be trust in the healthcare system. And what that means is that we've got to make it easier to get healthcare in the first place. So I want to be going out there saying, hey, look, in a healthcare system where no matter what you do for a living, if you're working at all, you can go and get healthcare, even if you've been laid off of your job, and you don't have to worry about falling into medical debt. And by the way, when there's a new pandemic, here's a new medication we created that you can take to protect yourself. But when you feel locked out of the healthcare system, like too many people do, then when we come to you with a new medication that's for free for a disease that didn't exist a year ago, you're probably less likely to trust us. And so there's a reason as a public health official, I wrote the book on Medicare for All, because I know that if we're not serious about guaranteeing every single person in this country access to health care, then we're going to continue to lose the battle for hearts and minds when it comes to public health too.
I bought that book back in the day. Abdul El-Sayed is a phenomenal candidate, and
has to win.
Mallory McMorrow should be doing the right thing here and stepping aside, because we cannot let AIPAC, Ghoul, Marge Simpson-ass voice, Haley Stevens, charisma vacuum Haley Stevens, to be the second Senate. Do we really need another AIPAC freak in Michigan? This state is blue now. Why? This is the Pennsylvania syndrome. Like, the states are blue. We don't need to elect these, like, that are trending blue, these corporate moderates here. Let's get behind Abdul El-Sayed, and the people that are reticent to do it, like, stop. There's this casual racism about Muslim people, and it's like too radical just by definition. Why? He's a former public health official. He has deep experience in government too, and is the exact antidote to this moment, because as you mentioned, Matt, like, that is the way you take that same almost argument that RFK makes. He said the people on the in the CDC are too often, there's conflict of interest. That's what RFK was saying just a few days ago, speaking about like some of the corruption there, right? And that was the justification for his firings. This is how you make the positive case while still touching on that thing that unfortunately Kennedy has tapped into.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.